the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist. Now, that name Antichrist, it doesn't just mean someone who is in opposition to Christ, although that is true. It also means something that takes the place of Christ or in substitution of Christ. And here's what worries me about the church today is some of us believe that we're in a good place spiritually because we're not involved in the same sins that we used to be involved in, right? It doesn't look overtly sinful. We're not involved in addiction. Maybe we're not involved in the lust of the flesh like we used to be. We've changed somewhat, but we've allowed subtly little things to creep into our lives that maybe aren't in opposition to Christ, but have taken the place of Christ or are the substitute for Christ on the throne of our hearts. You realize that, so for some of you, your career can be anti-Christ, that you're worshiping at the altar of your career in place of worshiping Christ. That is anti-Christ, in substitute of Christ. For some of you, maybe it's your education. For some of you, you're chasing dollars. For some of you, it's a relationship. For some of you, it's your children's sports activities and all of the extracurricular activities that they're involved in. Why? Because it's taking the place, the throne of Christ in your life. It is anti-Christ, and we feel like it's acceptable, right? Or that it's permissible because it's not as bad as we used to be. You realize if you're worshiping anything other than Christ, that is anti-Christ and that is not pleasing to God. It's called idolatry. Over and over and over again in the Old Testament, the Jewish people were judged for their idolatry. They were taken captive. They were judged. They were punished. They experienced hardship. Why? Because they allowed something else to take the throne of their heart rather than God. My challenge to you this morning is no matter where you came from or no matter how terrible a person, sinner you used to be, I want you to get alone with the Lord and I want you to ask God and say, God, are there any antichrists in my life? Is there anything that I've allowed into my life that has taken my affection away from you? That has distracted me from worshiping you and you alone? Because you and you alone deserve my worship, deserve that attitude of my heart. Are you with me?